Yeah, I've just been really digging the logos analogy via cloud watching or via just pattern recognition. So like if you wanna find the center point of reality, like the point of all places, the place from which everything springs forth, like the ultimate end goal of all spiritual searches or meditation stuff, it's the reason everyone has such a difficult time in describing it or recognizing it is that it is recognition itself. So there's no way, like if you're getting or you're understanding anything, you're already completely saturated in the phenomenon, and there's no way that you could even have a memory of self or anything associated with you that wouldn't be you. You'd have to be recognizing yourself. You have to be recognizing a memory. You have to be recognizing a perception. If you're cloud watching, you're recognizing bunnies and dragons and stuff happening, and that recognition is the logos, and the recognition is identical or a synonym of meaning. So it's the story of a book. Like the logos of a book is the story. Is that story contained in any one of the pages or anywhere? Like, no, it's not there, but can you recognize the story? Are you touching a part of it with every word that you read? Like every word that you read is a part of the story of a book. It's a fragment of it. And if you were to try and study that fragment without knowledge of the whole book, you would not come to the correct conclusion. It's like you already have to have the conclusion of the book for any of the sentences in the book to make any sense. And so like when science goes in and studies things, it's like they break down the story, the universe, into like singular words, and they're like studying and they're like the is composed of T, H, and E, and like all the thes seem interchangeable. Like physically in a book, you can take any of the thes and replace any of the thes with any other the, and the story doesn't change. And you can replace any letter with the same letter from any other place, and the story doesn't change. Like that level of the organizational pattern of reality does not really matter. Even though when you do that, like suddenly within the story, there is a character that is reading a book and cutting out letters and sentences and then pasting them back together and trying to study the material of a book. Like that enters into the story. It becomes part of the story. So the story can get very like meta and very self-referential, and then those narratives become paradoxical, interesting, and I would say unstable. So like science or digging into like a book that is too self-aware doesn't go anywhere. Like once the book reaches self-awareness and the author has bestowed full powers of authorship upon any one of the characters, like if that happens, then the story is essentially over, since it has no limitations and it just kind of like, but that's where things are coming from. If you were gonna actually truly chase the causality chain of like what's the first mover, what's the primary mover, it's the narrative, it's the recognition, it's the meaning. And so as you stack that, you see bigger chunks of meaning, like you see the meaning of a sentence, and that only all those sentences tied together would you see the meaning of a book or the meaning of a chapter. But if you get to certain parts of the story are so entangled that you can say that, oh, this section here, this plot, this event is the central event of the story around which all other events kind of like swirl. And so you have those points in history. You have certain events in history, and you have certain sequences of history, and then those are seen to be like the point. And there's plots that are weaving together. There's parallel plots. There's subplots. There's the main plot, and it's like once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So that's the conversion. And it's not to say that you can't get the story wrong or your assumption to the story, but that's like that ability to see meaning is what makes like if you can truly see meaning in the moment, you're truly accessing, that's theosis, that's divinity. Like a character in a book obviously can't see meaning. So that's people that can't see the meaning in any particular moment. Like if you see no meaning to something, then that's unconscious character writing. That character is just in the book. It's just a character. A reader, like somebody who's reading, can see the meaning on the page. They see the meaning in the scene. They see the meaning in the situation. And I don't know, I haven't really read it or can't get into it, but to me, like Finnegan's Wake seems to be, like a book like that seems to be devoid of meaning. Or it could just be beyond, but I think it's supposed to, yeah, it's a simple. It obviously has meaning, but I don't think it doesn't have meaning in the traditional sense that a narrative has meaning. It has meaning just by the event that it is, like stuff like that. So you can have hidden meaning. You can have meaning that's too complex to understand. It's over your head. So that could be why I don't find any meaning in Finnegan's Wake. But it's also why people don't find meaning in the Bible, or they don't find meaning in ancient stories and stuff like that, or mythology or narrative. They can't see the imaginative or the meaning. Like people want to call it the imaginative, but it's just it's the level where meaning is. Like where is the meaning of a book? Like books don't make any sense without meaning. They obviously have meaning, but the meaning is not contained in the book anywhere. There's absolutely no way meaning or reading can get into a book, not real reading. The book is always read. Nothing in the book, nothing written in the book has actual reading. It would be like the equivalent of like a description of reading, or reading about reading, or the idea of reading. Like if you had a character in the book and you were wrote like, oh, and then that character started reading, what you're experiencing right there is the idea of reading. So that's the difference between like a authentic, quote-unquote, spiritual experience, or an authentic experience of meaning versus the idea of meaning. It's very similar to the difference between reading and reading about reading. And then the hilarious thing is that even if you get a fake situation where you're reading about reading instead of actually reading, you're still reading. Like you're right there reading. And then you have to accept that what you're doing right there is reading, even though you're reading, you have the idea of reading and it's wrong. And it's like the reading about reading is like the Antichrist. It's not actually reading. It's a description or a retelling of reading. But even in that retelling, there's still recognition. There's still logos. So like when you see stuff in the sky, in the stars, constellations, omens, symbols, it's the logos, right? If there's an omen, if there's a symbol, if there's a sign, if there's a word, if there's a face, it's all singular meaning. Like the ocean is all one, so all the meaning in the universe is part of the meaning of the story, just like every word in a book is part of the meaning of the book. So it's absolutely everywhere, saturated in everything, impossible to get away from. So it's like if but that scientifically, mechanically, even in terms of materialism of why or where does this universe come from in the moment, that is where it springs forth. Just like the plot or the meaning of a book is where the book came from. That's the thing that causes the letters to get into the particular places, and every other chain of causality is subservient to the meaning are subservient to the plot of the book. It doesn't matter how the book was made necessarily. The driving force, the motive force, the foundational force was still the meaning of the book. It doesn't matter, like digging into how the printing press works, or how the is the paper acid free or not, like how is it typed, was it hand, all of that stuff is meaningful, but it's not the causative factor of why the book is there. And so that's why the truth is so like the ultimate truth of history, right? The meaning, like when everybody says what's the ultimate truth, it would be like, what's the main why of this epoch? What's the main because of this era? What's the story of this age, this chapter? And so that's why, which is, it had, it's something to do with Christ. The meaning is probably, the meaning of existence and of the universe is probably somewhat beyond our grasp, just like the meaning of any deep text is, it's probably too much for us. Like the meaning of a book of any author that's like radically smarter than us, we're not going to understand it exactly or fully. So it's like the meaning of Christ or whatever is mysterious. It's like, it's mysterious in that way of like, there's a book with just more layers than you could understand, but it's like obviously about this character, this thing, this person. That's what the book is about. And that, people find that as like it's about the perfection of your humanity. Like, what's the perfection of humanity? Like, what does it mean for humanity to be perfected through trials and tribulations and suffering and awakening and illuminating and all of that stuff? Like, so that's the meaning of everybody's life. Like every human's life, that meaning is the perfection of humanity. So like, what does it mean to be perfect? What does it mean to be totally authentic, in alignment with God, etc., etc., etc.? And what does it mean for that to be, like, you explore that by getting it wrong as well. So but it's all, because it's all recognition based, there's these like truths that are just hidden like in the open. And so that's why people are so obsessed with the book, the Bible, reading. It's because reading is such a good fractal example of logos, of meaning, of author created meaning. Like reading, symbols, ritual, sacrament, all of these things are meaningful events, meaningful rituals, meaningful procedures. It's all about seeing the meaning in everything. Meaningful fasting, meaningful giving, meaningful dying. And people hop on all over that, like, oh, it's like, oh, purpose is another thing. People say purpose, and that's not really like, purpose-driven existence is okay, but it's more like, what's the meaning of my existence? Instead of trying to do something, when you try and do the will of God, you have purpose. Whereas like if you try and submit to or discover the will of God, not your own, then you have meaning. That's the meaning. And then that's the logos in under 15 minutes. And so in the beginning was the word, in the beginning was meaning, and that meaning was the inspiration and the cause and the source for the creation of the book. And the book would be all of reality, specifically this age of reality. And that book would have chapters and probably go on forever.